Now then, you're welcome along to the football show. So later on, Andrew Mangan from Arseblog is going to talk to us about Arsenal and their rise this season under Mikel Arteta. First though, PSG. They suffered a 3-0 defeat to Monaco on Sunday night. There is talk of dressing room strife. There is naturally a manager under big pressure. Squad locks, any balance or cohesion. Fans, frankly, seem to hate the team. So not much is going right. For more, we're joined by Jonathan Johnson, French-based correspondent for CBS. Jonathan, great to have you on. You're very welcome.
Hey there, guys. Thanks for having me on. Thanks for the invitation.
Let's start with the specifics of the defeat to Monaco. 3-0 defeat, their heaviest defeat of the campaign. Nobody will be shocked to hear. Now, they are still 12 points clear in Ligue 1 because that's how things tend to work. Unacceptable, a sporting shame was how Mauricio Pochettino put it. They have now lost 4 of 6, PSG, with this defeat to Monaco. Explain the performance. It would suggest, given their dominance in this league, a team not trying very hard.
Yeah, you're right. You know, they've pretty much down tools since the Champions League defeat against Real Madrid. Unfortunately, those kind of implosions generally tend to bring out the worst in the PSG squad. I'd say this season more than any other, we kind of could see it coming before it actually happened. Obviously, it was still a surprise the way that it did come about in Madrid. But, PSG haven't been playing particularly well all season. You can probably count their most convincing performances on one hand. I think really when you've got a talismanic player like Kylian Mbappe, basically papering over many big gaping cracks in the squad, as he had been doing for the most part of the campaign, it's unsurprising really that, PSG's season is unravelling the way it has, because it was pretty flimsy to start with. There wasn't too much holding it together.
There is much talk of an unhappy dressing room. For instance, RMC Sport are reporting 2 camps materialised inside the squad. We have on one hand the South American Spanish speakers, that cohort, and on the other hand we have the French speakers, and they don't much like each other right now. What are you hearing?
Yeah, a lot of what we hear in and around the club tallies with what's being reported at the moment. I think that some examples are perhaps being blown a little bit out of context, but this particular information, is quite close to the money. There is a divide. There are certain factions within the dressing room. It's not something new. It's something that PSG have been, I would say, battling with, but it's not like that much has been done to address it in the last couple of years. It's basically something that's been allowed to fester, grow, and now it's, pretty much out of control, certainly out of control under the current ownership model, which is why, people are clamouring in Paris for changes as soon as possible. Everyone is pretty much, certain that Mauricio Pochettino and Leonardo will both be leaving the club between now and the end of the season. So obviously that begs the question, which direction PSG are going to go in the future? Are they going to bring somebody in who can perhaps look to salvage that, look to, try and get both parties to, to sort of come together for the greater good? Or is there going to be some sort of purge on one side or the other? Obviously there could be natural departures dictated by contract expirations. You've got Mbappe's contract situation, which is still dragging on. You've got Angel Di Maria as well, who is highly unlikely to be handed a contract extension now, despite the fact that he has been a very good servant for PSG since they brought him in from Manchester United. So there's a potential for a lot of change, and that's not just on the pitch, but also off it.
It's funny, when I put that RMC report to you about the Spanish speakers versus the French speakers, I thought that you would shoot it down and say, no, it's not true. That's too childish and too basic, and it's a media story. And yet here we are. If you speak Spanish, you're in our group. You speak French, you're in our group, and we don't like the other lot. And this is how, I don't know, a bunch of children might behave on the first day of school.
One thing that I would say is I don't think it's as clear-cut as that, because there are certain people who can sort of transition between the two groups, because obviously you've got Hakimi, who can speak Spanish and can communicate with that South American contingent, as well as the fact that you've got Marquinhos, who sort of by birth is part of that South American contingent, but also can relate to the French side. He speaks very good French, sort of unlike many of the other foreign players within the squad. So there are certain, sort of elements of the two groups who are kind of a bit more integrated with the others than perhaps some of their other teammates. But all you have to do really is follow some of the PSG players on social media, and you will see that there is very clearly, a group who spend a lot of time with each other away from the pitch. And a lot of those guys, whether they're playing or in the team regularly or not, are often, sort of heavily featuring, in the social experiences of many of these players. And I think more than anything, it's not so much the fact that sort of the Spanish speakers or the South American influenced players want to spend time together or enjoy spending a lot of their time together. I think it's the fact that there is an element of unprofessionalism, not very much your hard work ethic, that a number of players within that group are guilty of. I mean, let's take Mauro Icardi as an example, because he's somebody who doesn't play or hasn't played very much for PSG over the course of this season, has been in pretty poor form even when he has been on the pitch. I know he scored a few last minute winners, but aside from that, he's not really contributed much on the pitch. And he was allowed to turn his private life into basically club business a few months ago when, although the rumours about him and Wanda Icardi came out, he was basically missing training because he was, jetting off to another country in order to try and win her back or to convince her not to break up their marriage. That kind of thing makes PSG an absolute laughingstock. Obviously, Champions League capitulations like the one against Real Madrid don't help. But, when you've got a player who's, in the spotlight as much as somebody like an Icardi because of his personal life, everything that's gone on before, and who his partner and also agent is, he's naturally going to be under a lot more scrutiny than some of the other, perhaps nicer, more friendly, sort of less eager to hog the spotlight kind of teammates. So I think there's an element of the PSG squad that's become very frustrated at this other element of the group that has become extremely unprofessional over the course of the last 2 years or so.
Not least Neymar. Neymar is a dreadful professional. He basically admits as much in his Amazon documentary. There's a really telling moment where it's in lockdown, where there's nothing else to do and no nightclubs to visit, where he actually trains hard for a while and comes back, and that's when PSG reached Champions League final and he's actually in good form. And here we are a couple of years on. It doesn't look fit. So when that's your highest paid player and that's a kind of a cultural architect of sorts, it's only natural that standards in that dressing room are going to be appalling and on the floor. And just to heighten PSG's sense of embarrassment, L'Équipe released estimates of the salaries of the Ligue 1's top earners. Now, we all knew it would be PSG dominated, but what's just so embarrassing here for the club is that the top 14 spots are all PSG. You have to go to number 15 before you get a non-PSG salary. At top of the pile is Neymar, 50 million a year, euro. Messi, 40 million a year, euro. Mbappe, 27 million a euro a year, and on it goes. So even if they have down tools at the moment, they're still going to win the league. It's of no consolation to anyone.
Yeah, what I would say is the L'Équipe report, which is an annual thing, should probably be taken with a pinch of salt, given how many clubs immediately react to say, "Oh, what's being reported by L'Équipe isn't quite accurate," and stuff along those lines. I mean, it's not completely unfounded, but some of the figures are perhaps not quite exactly what they are, and the clubs will be very quick to point that out.
Well,
However,
that's because the clubs don't want their underpaid players banging on the door in fury at having opened L'Équipe that morning.
Yeah, of course. And also, I think one of the most shocking things, and it's always the case when this comes out, is just how many sort of peripheral figures at PSG are paid substantially more than key players who are perhaps, performing in among the league's best and most consistent performers. There's some of the best performers in Ligue 1 this season, guys like Seko Fofana at Lens. He's nowhere near what even a PSG reserve like, a Julian Draxler is on, for example. It's absurd, some of the money or some of the contracts that some of these players have been roped into at PSG. And that is where Sporting Director Leonardo's position comes in, because some of these players could have been moved on during his, obviously this is his second spell at the club since he returned in 2019. You've had guys like Levin Kazawa, Julian Draxler, whose contracts have come to an end, yet he's preferred to extend them, even give them a pay rise, basically in the hope that a club which club, there's not many of them, would come in and actually pay transfer fees for these players when they're barely playing any football. I think Kurzawa's featured maybe 9 senior minutes for PSG this season, and that was in the Trophée des Champions as a substitute. Who, in their right minds, is going to pay any money to sign Kurzawa, just to negotiate with him, knowing that they're going to come nowhere close to touching the salary that he's on at PSG at the moment? It's absolute madness, and it's just another sign of a squad that's been really inadequately built and also poorly constructed by Leonardo, because if you're really going to, pay the best performers and the most important players, the best money, you're going to have the likes of Mbappe, Marquinhos, Verratti up there above, usurping guys like Neymar, guys like Messi, guys like Jorginho Wijnaldum as well.
Jonathan, just to make matters worse, the PSG fans are certainly a large quotient of them.
Is there any good news coming?
No. A large quotient of them find their own team repulsive in many ways. So if we talk since that famous defeat at the Bernabeu, we have had a 3-0 win against Bordeaux, and then this 3-0 defeat which we jumped off on against Monaco on Sunday evening. So the 3-0 defeat on Sunday was bad enough. If you take the 3-0 win against Bordeaux, in some ways it was worse in spite of the result, because at the Parc des Princes the fans just let loose. Messi was booed roundly. Neymar was booed roundly. There was a moment as the two of them stood over a free kick in the first half and the boos gathered in intensity. This is Messi and Neymar being booed, and then ironic cheers when Neymar misses the target. And Neymar scores a goal, is booed loudly. Pochettino says he was saddened by what I experienced today. It affected all of us. The message consistently from fans, not just in that Bordeaux game, but of late, has been, we don't like this team. We don't like the direction the club is taking. We feel that whatever connection we had with PSG is gone and the club has been replaced by a soulless commercial behemoth.
Yeah, I mean, they're very angry at this, I guess we could say gradual erosion, but I think the erosion has actually sped up or been sped up, partly down to COVID and the fact they haven't been allowed in the stadium for 2 years. Because let's not forget, it's not just like Bordeaux was suddenly a breaking point where they started getting vocal and calling out the club's leadership. Back earlier this year, before the first leg of the Real Madrid clash in the Champions League, they did also voiced their concerns, called out certain members of the PSG hierarchy. So there were kind of warning shots there. I do think that perhaps, because I know that these feelings have been sort of brewing for quite a while within the fan base, that they probably could have expressed their disgust or distaste for everything that's going on earlier than they did. They've had ample opportunities. Certainly if, their grievances are, not sticking to the traditional shirt colours, that sort of stuff that they've mentioned in the past. They've had plenty of opportunities to be angry and irate about that. But also at the same time, when you look at what's going on at the moment, okay, Lionel Messi, not fit enough to go and play for PSG in Monaco, but fit enough to join up with the Argentina national team. And you've got, Neymar doing similar over the years as well. Are PSG's fans really that wrong to feel that the players are laughing at them and basically not doing their jobs properly? No, I think we all feel that they're justified. So really, I think the only question with regards to the fans is why they didn't voice these concerns sooner, because I can tell you, knowing quite a few of them very well, that fans have been talking about this kind of stuff for years now. It's not just months or weeks.
Well, I suppose Champions League campaign still being alive meant, okay, we'll wait and see, but we don't really like the smell of this thing, but we'll wait and see. And now all the anger has been unleashed. So Neymar's been booed before numerous times by the PSG fans and has had to win them back, certainly when he threatened to leave and then stayed. For Lionel Messi, this may well have been the first time in his life that home fans have booed him. Now, that was against Bordeaux. Like the holy trinity of I'm just not playing because I don't want to is the stomach bug, the back strain or the flu. He went for the flu option, and as you said, now he's pitched up for international duty. Messi will be disgusted to have been booed by his own fans. There's a chance he may have the flu for a considerable part of the remaining season. He's out of there, isn't he?
I mean, I'm going to be interested to know how Messi plays it, how PSG play it with Messi between now and the end of the season, because obviously there's very little for the players to play for at club level. In fact, I was writing something about Kylian Mbappe's future and how he's basically not going to have a competitive match between now and the UEFA Nations League in June. And that's going to be the case for a number of these players, where they're basically sort of waiting to get themselves in shape, playing just semi-competitive games, because do they really count, or PSG are that far ahead at the top of Ligue? There's definitely a debate to be had about that. So I think Messi, I know he's had a hard time at international level in the past with the fans when they don't feel that he's necessarily the same Messi that they see, week in or saw week in, week out with Barcelona. But also at the same time, you also have to bear in mind what the PSG fans have been subjected to since Messi arrived. They had this last summer's transfer window trumpeted as the best transfer window any club has ever had. Oh, look, we signed all these players on free transfers. It's absolute genius on our part, a lot of backslapping by the PSG hierarchy. And then they even had to suffer all of the Lionel Messi Ballon d'Or celebrations, celebrating an individual accolade that PSG performances played little or no part in. So I think that they were right, to vent their disgust and dissatisfaction at the way that Messi's time with PSG has gone so far. Because if you crunch just the numbers solely, it's not been good enough. A player like Lionel Messi of his quality shouldn't be delivering just a small handful of goals in Ligue 1 and living on, one or two decent strikes in the Champions League, but otherwise, just some tap-ins.
Yeah, Champions League, we've seen the best of Messi, or certainly the best of his PSG Messi, in that in the 7 Champions League games he's played, he scored 5 times. That's a more than acceptable return, and there was a glittering goal or two in there as well. Whereas across 18 Ligue 1 games, he's only managed 2 goals. Again, I don't know when he was ever booed by home fans, and I don't know when he last scored 2 goals in 18 games. Admittedly, there are 10 assists in there as well, so there is an evolution in his role as he gets older. But still, 2 goals in 18 games is not really what Lionel Messi was signed for. What are you seeing in his week-to-week performances in the French League, Jonathan, as opposed to Champions League, where, as I said, he certainly weighed in with a higher percentage of goals?
I think the big issue that PSG have, or that they've had since Messi has arrived, has been a lack of identity. PSG don't have any clear identity. Part of that is on Pochettino, part of that is on the players. But also, I think as well, Messi's arrival has coincided with Mbappe emerging as the absolutely undisputed talisman of this PSG side. And it brings me back to the subject that we touched on earlier with L'Equipe about the best paid players in the squad. If you're dividing up those wages based on contribution, Mbappe is so far ahead of everybody else, and not just in terms of his contribution on the pitch as well, also the way that he's conducted himself professionally in the face of what's been quite a tricky period, given his contract's been running down. His relationship with the fans hasn't always been the closest, yet they finally recognised that actually the guy who may well walk away for nothing at the end of the season has been far more committed than guys like Neymar, guys like Messi, and basically all the dreams that they were sold at the beginning of the season after that glittering transfer window, have been completely ridiculed. And also, it's not even just the guys on the pitch. Look at the guys off it, the guy who can't get on it, Sergio Ramos. These are just really, really poor decisions. But yet, Pochettino had basically come into this season thinking, well, we've now signed Ramos on a free, so we're going to be playing 3 at the back with Marquinhos, Ramos and Kimpembe, moving Hakimi to that right wing-back role that he was so used to playing to great effect with Inter, and will fill left wing-back with either Bernat or Nuno Mendes, who's actually been one of the highlights of PSG's season so far. And yet Ramos has barely even played. He's literally not been able to get himself fit enough to be on the pitch. I don't want to absolve Pochettino of too much of the blame for PSG's identity struggles this season, but how can you possibly form an idea of what tactical identity you want your team to play with if you never even arrive at a moment where all the players are fit?
But he's also not allowed to do the job as he sees it. Like, he had the temerity to substitute Messi at one point this season, and it became a worldwide storm because of Messi's body language and confusion over whether Messi was ignoring him or not. But either way, Pochettino, for that 2-week period subsequent to substituting Lionel Messi in a nothing French game, got a glimpse of what it's like to get on the wrong side of these superstars. And I guarantee you, against Real Madrid at the Bernabeu, when the tide was starting to turn, Pochettino, based on everything we know about his managerial leanings at Southampton and Spurs, wanted to put on a hard-working midfielder to try and turn the tide and shore things up. And he was afraid to do it because he knew the backlash would come. And it's no right to run a football club. And it was interesting, the fans they released a statement, the PSG Ultra Group, and it is notable, like, they call out the players, obviously, but Nasser El-Khelafi, the president, not fit for his job. What they say of Pochettino is he's not the true decision maker. So, I mean, it's no one wants to be told, well, you're kind of just there as a bit of a placeholder. But equally, it was an understanding that he's not been let get on with the job the way he wants to, because he's been given this unbalanced squad and he's forced to pick these players. And at a certain point at European level, he's going to be completely found out. So it's hard to know where Pochettino's stock is. The fact that Manchester United are still pursuing him and nobody thinks this is a terrible idea based on his PSG job shows that, well, much like Tuchel, you're kind of trying to do this job with one hand tied behind your back because the dressing room's toxic and you're forced to play certain players. So it doesn't really diminish Pochettino's standing at all.
It does and it doesn't, because also I think at the same time, if you're looking at for potential evolution in Pochettino's managerial style, there hasn't been any showed with PSG. Yes, we can debate sort of how much say he has, how much flexibility there is, but given how many times key players miss matches for PSG, there is a bit of flexibility for him, an opportunity to experiment with different players, bleed in some of the youngsters from the youth academy. There's been none of that.
But isn't it true that Pochettino is meticulous in his preparation, and it's about going through shape and lines of running, and you're here and you're there and this is how we do it, and over time that starts to really have an effect? I mean, the occasional game or two where he can put in different players, that doesn't play to his strengths, really. I mean, that's personnel changes. But like Pochettino, if you were to have a private conversation with Pochettino and you said you realise you have to take over this team and 3 of the players aren't going to run, you know what he would say. You just know what he would say. It's ludicrous.
Yeah, and you have a point, and it actually takes me back to an interview that he did with Ligue before the end of last year, where he, it was very thinly veiled, where he basically alluded to this. So his thoughts on how difficult it is to actually do his job properly, have been made very clear. There is zero chance that he will be continuing as PSG coach beyond the end of this season.
Right.
And what will be interesting is to see where he lands next, what style of football he deploys, and whether or not he's actually capable of showing sort of the tactical evolution that you'd have expected to see from him after Spurs, but for the reasons we've discussed, you can't actually really expect to see from a PSG team. But I also do think that part of Pochettino's return to PSG has kind of been soured a bit, because he spoke so much and in great depth while he was Spurs coach and afterwards about his fondness for PSG, how much he enjoyed his time there as a player. Of course, he captained the team as well, and how he wanted to return as coach one day. He just wasn't sure when it would be. And then when that opportunity presented itself, Pochettino not only refused to move his family back to Paris, he barely made any effort to speak any French or understand it. So most of his press conferences are like a weird mismatch of French, Spanish and English. And there was never any sort of clear communication. And I think it wore very thin with the fans quite quickly. Right. This sort of, I was a former player, a former captain, you've got this emotional connection to the club, when really it's actually turned out to be more of a superficial connection where I think all parties liked the idea more than the reality.
Right, okay. There we go, Jonathan. We got through 20 minutes without a single positive. I think that's a success. So thank you so much for joining us. Much appreciated. Jonathan Joseph, football writer, France-based correspondent as well for CBS. Thanks, Jonathan.
Thanks a lot. Cheers.
Great to have you on. And our football show coverage is brought to you by Sky. All the football you love in one place across Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports. Short break. We're going to be talking Arsenal next.